What's up, everybody? And today we're checking out, here's what happens if someone invades the United States. This is by Watop, W-A-T-O-P. I've never checked out this channel before. They've obviously got quite a substantial following with 3.22 million subscribers. Anyway, I will leave a link down below to the original video. Please go give it some love, give it a like, give it a subscribe, all that good stuff. Really important that you do that. Also, if you haven't seen, the Morale Kickstarter is live right now. I gave them a shout out. I'm going to do it again. Alex, Cecil, Caleb, Ryan, Andrew, David, thank you for backing the Kickstarter yesterday. If you go ahead and back the Kickstarter today, I will give you a shout out in tomorrow's video. Also, tomorrow during the live stream at 8 p.m, we're going to be doing something very special where the backers of the Kickstarter are going to be memorized for eternity. That's all I'm going to say. Be there 8 p.m. tomorrow. Other than that, oh wait, check out Chug. 10% off. Link down below. The best sponsor this YouTube channel has ever had. If you want to drink your Morale, see the Morale Yacht logo? If you want to drink your Morale in the best drinking vessel in the world, this will keep it cold for a very long time. 10% off. Link down below. Other than that, let's shut up. Let's pull this up and let's see what's going on here with people pretending to invade the US.
In 2023, the United States topped the list of...
I recognize that guy's voice. Wasn't that the guy that did the US military stuff that's completely disappeared from YouTube?
Countries with the highest military spending, allocating $916 billion for defense. The gap was huge. China came in second with 200...
China. I gotta turn this heating off because I'm sweating my tits off in this room right now. Turn my heater off. China.
96 billion, followed by Russia with 109 billion. But even without the gap...
What are Russia doing with 109 billion? They're doing that with it. All their equipment's garbage.
The amount is huge. Just to give you an idea, there are 15 countries on this list, and if you add up the spending of 14 of them, you get about $1 trillion. Not much more than what the U.S. alone spent on its own.
Wow.
For those who love numbers, here's another fact. The figure amounted to more than 40% of global military spending that year in the whole world. And it's expected that the amount will only keep growing. By 2033, the U.S. will be spending up to $1.1 trillion on military expenses. But why? I mean, do they really need to spend that much? And does it actually make U.S. defense invincible? This is a complicated military topic. I need some coffee.
I've never checked out this channel before. I'm excited for this. This is going to be interesting.
An unobtrusive reminder to hit the like button if it slips your mind. And a big thanks to those who understand my wish to stay anonymous. Throughout U.S. history, only once did another country manage to invade the American capital. The British occupation, although brief, did happen. This was during the Anglo-American War of 1812 to 1815. The British attacked the former...
I actually did a video on this. I actually did a whole story video where I explained the whole situation where the Royal Marines, yes, my people, burnt the White House down. Well, they didn't burn it down, it was just burnt. Fascinating story, you should go check it out.
Colonies after American troops had, in turn, invaded Canada and burned down government buildings. That's the short and simplified summary.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. was picked as a target because of its symbolic significance, easy access from the sea, and the American troops' inability to defend it. Back then, the American Army still seriously lacked experience. And so on August 24th, 1814, the forces of both armies met outside Washington, and the British Army easily defeated the volunteer American forces in the Battle of Bladensburg.
Yep.
President Madison and Secretary of State James Monroe almost got captured. Afterward, the British troops set fire to the Capitol, the White House, the Library of Congress, and other government buildings.
I'm always against burning down libraries, guys. You know how much I love me books. But yeah, it was the Royal Marines that did this. And again, I've done a really good video on it.
The next morning, British soldiers were looking for ammo and other supplies to burn, but after an accident with powder barrels killed 30 soldiers, the British decided to leave Washington. The occupation lasted exactly 2 days, but it still had a huge impact because the enemy literally took over the U.S. Capitol, and the president's family had to be urgently evacuated.
And a storm came through and put all the fires out.
Even though this was the only instance since the War of Independence when a foreign power did something like that, cases of intrusion into the country's territory did happen. For example, this happened during the Mexican War.
Oh.
The occupation was short. The sea's territory was small, and it's pretty hard to call it a full-scale invasion. So it turns out that for over 200 years, the U.S. hasn't fought with another country on its territory.
Yeah.
Are there reasons for that? Oh,
Because the US is absolute badass.
definitely.
Spat everywhere there.
First, let's think about possible attack scenarios. So you don't have to be a great strategist to understand it's best to attack where a country is least defended.
True.
If we look at the USA, what do we see? The country's surrounded by oceans on two sides, so we need to choose the right coast to attack. To do that, hold on, I have a list. Here it is. This is what the list of the 10 states with the highest defense spending in the 2022 fiscal year looked like. It's clear that Virginia, Texas, and California are at the top in terms of defense, but it's also worth...
Why Virginia? Why is Virginia up there? I'm presuming there's a lot of military bases there. That's what I'm presuming it is. But yeah, I didn't know that. Didn't know Virginia was up there.
Noting that 7 out of the 10 states on this list are located on the east coast of the country. Moreover, if you look at the map of the USA and how the military bases are located,
yeah,
you
that makes
can also
sense.
notice that a lot of them are concentrated on the east coast, as if it would be more logical to choose the west coast for an attack.
Well, yeah, I guess,
Some experts
but
discussing geopolitics online suggest that an invasion could be launched from the Gulf of Mexico to cut the country off from a significant portion of its oil supplies. However, there are 2 major caveats to consider. First of all, the U.S. has a strategic oil reserve for situations like this, and it's quite substantial. Secondly, an attack from the Gulf of Mexico puts the opponent in a tricky spot.
imagine thinking I'm going to go and invade America. What a fucking bizarre thing to think. It's like being like, I'm going to invade the Roman Empire during its absolute prime.
In response, the U.S. could hit them from 3 different sides. In short, this idea isn't great. But of course, we can't say with 100% certainty where an attack on the U.S. might be planned. It all depends on the opponent, the nuances of their tactics, the situation at the specific moment in time, and all that.
If it was Russia or China, they'd probably come through Alaska. They'd probably do that and then go down Canada to America. That's probably the way they would go. In fact, I think that would be the most likely. It just wouldn't happen, though. It just wouldn't happen. It's just not going to happen.
And only if we rely on some arguments can we assume that an invasion might happen from the western side, simply because there's less firepower there. On the other hand, this difference in firepower is very small, so it's unlikely that choosing one shore over the other would provide any serious advantage.
Yeah.
But what if there's a land invasion? There are only 2 options here because the United States only shares land borders with Canada and Mexico. Meanwhile, all 3 countries are, at the moment, in neighborly partner.
Well, let's say that. It's not really a thing anymore, is it? They're not really friends right now. The whole Canada-American thing's quite, not very good.
relationships. A free trade agreement has been signed, and they all gain from the partnership.
When was this put out? 5 months ago? You might want to put an update on that, mate.
And not only from it, the U.S. and Canada have long been partners in defense and national security, plus mutual trade and investment between Canada and the U.S. support millions of jobs. To break such relationships, there has to be a really strong reason.
Yeah, the reason is TRUMP. That's why there's not strong relations between them 2 right now. God, 5 months the difference can make, eh?
And to be honest, I can't think of one. In short, the scenario where an invasion starts from Mexico or Canada is unlikely, at least under the current circumstances. Also, the military strength of Mexico and Canada falls short compared to that of the U.S. Plus, when countries are next to each other, they can quickly launch a counterstrike, and the U.S. definitely has the means to retaliate.
Yeah.
No one would start a conflict with a clearly more powerful foe. But let's assume, just assume, that something happened. I don't know, a strange virus made everyone super aggressive and made them attack the neighboring country. Because there's a vast desert in the southwest United States, invaders from the south will have to move either to California or Texas. Yep, you remember right. These are 2 states with the most personnel, and they're the ones focused on the defense industry.
Yeah.
Not the best spot for an attack.
I was down right here in Yuma, Arizona, when I was in the bus. Went to Tucson as well. Went to Phoenix. Loved all them places down there. I loved Arizona. Do you know what? Arizona surprised me so much. I love that place. Flagstaff's a beautiful place. It really did surprise me how much I enjoyed it.
What about the north and Canada? Well, the invaders will have to cross the Great Lakes to get to the major cities, or at least they'll need to force a few serious rivers. In most areas along the U.S.-Canada border, potential invaders will find plenty of stunning national parks. It's really very beautiful there, but from a military value perspective, the territory, well, it's pretty much pointless. Canada has that kind of beauty too. Plus, in the event of an invasion, all those national parks would likely be filled with military personnel ready to defend. From this perspective, the terrain of the southern border, which is the border with Mexico, is more fitting for military operations. There aren't huge parks with forests and lakes, but there's the largest military base of the U.S. Army right in Texas, and launching an attack on the country in a spot like that would be extremely challenging. Looks like any land attack options are a no-go.
It keeps forgetting about Alaska. I think Alaska would be the main culprit, wouldn't it?
So we'll have to think about attacking from the ocean on the west coast. But it's not so easy here either. I mean, this option is better than going overland and heading straight for a military base, but it's way easier to say, we're attacking the west coast of the U.S., than to actually do it.
Yeah.
Mainly because the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans are two huge bodies of water that serve as natural barriers, keeping North America apart from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Before launching an attack on a country from the sea, these obstacles will need to be overcome, and it has to be done somehow without being noticed. This is hard. Transporting military troops and gear takes time.
Surely he's going to think about Alaska. Why is everyone forgetting about Alaska? That would be prime place for China or Russia to invade from. Of course it would be. It's right there. It's right next to them.
And during that time, the enemy will be extremely vulnerable in the open ocean, and the U.S. definitely won't just stand by and watch as a fleet from some country heads their way. So the ships will start bombing and sinking them using any available methods. The enemy will have to decide which ships to use for moving equipment and personnel. Larger ships are slow, heavy, and exposed, while smaller ones are at risk due to their limited range. The smaller the ship, the tougher it'll be to cross the ocean. And even if you manage to pull off such an operation, you won't win the war by shelling the shore from ships. You'll have to land troops. These operations are called amphibious assaults, and they're considered some of the most complex and dangerous in any war. With the U.S. having enough time, they'll be able to pull troops to the shore, and in the end, the invasion will probably not even start.
Yeah.
The enemy will be defeated, unable to land on the shore or immediately after landing. So it turns out that for such an invasion to succeed, the U.S. Army would have to be unbelievably weak, while the enemy's army would have to be unbelievably strong.
The truth is, if America was to fall, which every big empire that people didn't think was going to fall eventually fell, so it could happen with America at some point, it's going to be from within. It's literally going to be from within. That's what's going to happen, inevitably, isn't it? Like, we can't beat around the bush that American... I mean, look at the video that went out at 4 p.m. today. American politics is just all over the place, isn't it? And so the only place it could fall from is from within, let's be honest.
A scenario that's as far from reality as you can get. A good example of what a landing on the shore looks like is the landing of American, British, and Canadian troops in Normandy during World War II. This landing is the largest amphibious invasion in human history, and it was only successful because the enemy was misled. If the German command had known the exact date and location of the landing, all subsequent events would have unfolded quite differently. And even though basically the Allied forces only had to cross the English Channel, such an operation still took several years of preparation and a ton of strategic maneuvers, although it only took about 24 to 36 hours to actually cross the channel. Now imagine you have to cross an entire ocean, and the ways to track the enemy have changed a lot since World War II. Regardless of the size of the forces or their weapons, all of this needs to be delivered across a vast, unprotected stretch of ocean, well, or by air. But in any case, the naval and air power of the U.S. can wipe out any opponent long before they reach the coast. Some experts even say that all the fleets in the world don't have enough aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships to break through the U.S. Navy. There won't be enough fighter jets to gain air superiority either.
The other thing as well is if Mexico or Canada aligned with the enemy, if they turn around and said, we're going to align with Russia or China or whatever, and then let them build bases on their land, that's where things could get a bit sticky in a way. But the truth is that's not going to happen, is it? Let's be honest. Canada is definitely not going to align with Russia or China because they align more with Europe. So who knows? I think this video, there's a lot of newer updates on the alliances that can cause more issues, right? If America jumps out of NATO, that could be an issue, right? That's a conversation I'm not going to get into. But I think if anywhere was going to invade, it would be Russia from Alaska going down the coast. But then they would have to come a long way before they got to mainland America, wouldn't they?
So maybe the two oceans on either side of the U.S. are the main reason why no one has invaded the country for 2 centuries. The U.S. is just too far away to get troops there. In any case, pulling this off quickly and without being noticed so that the U.S. troops can't get ready for the landing isn't going to happen. But the country has done everything it can to make something like this just plain impossible.
Yep.
First off, we should thank the military satellites, which are specifically made for gathering intelligence, navigation, and military communication. As of December 2018, there were 320 known military or dual-use satellites in the sky, half of them belonging to the U.S., and the rest are split between Russia, China, and India. But these are very, very rough figures. Due to the high level of secrecy surrounding satellites, it's almost impossible to estimate how many exactly are in orbit. A satellite...
Not to mention now they could probably use Starlink for that same situation as well for monitoring the world.
It was first used for military-related purposes. It was a photo reconnaissance mission. The U.S. was the pioneer in this field, starting to work with military satellites back in the 1950s. For a while, the country even wanted to equip them with weapons to attack targets on the ground, but then they dropped that initiative. Today, satellites can track the movements of enemy...
You telling me America doesn't have some sort of weapon in space to attack countries? Then you're having a laugh. They definitely do, 100%.
Forces gather data and send it to the relevant agency, and satellites work all the time. With such a level of aerial surveillance, sneaking up on the U.S. is just impossible. No way, unless you dig a tunnel under the ocean. Military satellites don't just track enemy troop movements. There's also the Defense Support Program, and its satellites detect missile launches or spacecraft, even nuclear explosions, all using sensors that pick up infrared radiation. So even a sudden airstrike with missiles is off the table. But technologies for early detection exist not only in space. For example, there's a system called Relocatable Over-the-Horizon Radar. It's designed to provide wide-ranging surveillance of both aircraft and ships.
The truth is, right, the only like I said, America would only fall from the inside. It wouldn't fall from the outside. We know that. We're well aware of that. But who is the US most likely to go to war with next? Because it's been a while since they've had a good war, and you know America loves a good war. My presumption is it would just go to Iran, and if resources went over there and Russia and Ukraine slowed down a little bit, then tensions would go down, I think. I think the only thing that's going to bring tensions up is the whole Russia-Ukraine situation, especially now Trump's getting involved with not supporting Ukraine and that lot. To which, if the US leaves itself vulnerable or NATO leaves itself vulnerable for an attack from Russia or China, then that's when things get bad. If NATO get involved with the Russia-Ukraine thing, whether or not America backs them up, I think it'll still affect America either way. I think things would go pretty sour after that.
This system covers a wedge-shaped area of 64 degrees at a distance of 575 to 1,865 miles. Originally, the system was meant for tracking the movement of ships and planes over the Pacific Ocean during the Cold War. This way, they could coordinate fleet movements well ahead of a fight. How? To put it simply, the system uses atmospheric disturbances to spot incoming threats.
Wow.
Right now, the enemy will also have to deal with the U.S. Navy's 11 nuclear-powered fleet carriers, which will spot the invasion long before it comes to landing on the shore. But there's one more thing that definitely needs to be mentioned in connection with U.S. defense, and that's nuclear weapons. Let's consider...
How many nukes does the US actually have? Well, the thing is, I can Google it, but we probably don't know the exact amount. Although it says that they're supposed to say exactly how much they've got. I guarantee it's more than that. But I don't think... We always use nukes as a deterrent more than anything, but I don't think anyone would ever use them anymore. I think it would be very easy for people to use them, but I just don't think it'll happen.
A really extreme case where countries suddenly decide that the planet is no longer useful to them and it's time to use nuclear weapons. The U.S. has about 7,700 nuclear warheads in total, including 1,950 warheads ready for deployment via intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarines, and planes, as well as thousands of others that are in storage or awaiting dismantlement. The closest country in terms of nuclear military power is Russia. They have a bit more warheads, around 8,500, but only 1,800 of them are operational.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet a lot of them are so old that they don't even work anymore. Let's be honest.
For comparison, China has about 250 nuclear warheads, a bit less than France, which has 300, and a bit more than the UK, which has 225. At the same time, a nuclear war with any country that has a decent capability is mutual assured destruction.
Yeah, it is.
This is not a metaphor or an exaggeration. It's a specific existing term. It refers to the doctrine from the Cold War, according to which the use of weapons of mass destruction by both sides would lead to the complete destruction of both sides.
And the
Within
planet.
this
No one wins something like that. Everyone loses.
doctrine, it's impossible and pointless to suddenly strike the opponent with a massive nuclear strike. Everyone will just die. There will be no winner.
Yeah.
So no country really has a decent incentive to nuke the U.S. It would just lead to mutual destruction. By the way, that's one hell of a strong deterrent. And no, taking out all American nuclear weapons beforehand won't work either. If you believe the experts, it's practically impossible to eliminate the U.S. nuclear arsenal because it's based on a triad of land, air, and sea delivery systems.
That's the thing. Like, they could just put a nuclear sub right off the coast of whatever country's doing it. They could bomb the crap out of America, but there would be like a crazy amount of nuclear subs right off the coast of Russia who would just send more nukes. And so it's just, it wouldn't happen.
In short, you'll have to deactivate weapons from several types and at several locations all at once. For example, ballistic missiles launched from submarines are considered the most effective element of the U.S. nuclear deterrent since some of them are always out at sea.
Yeah.
Ground-based missiles are also hard to eliminate since they're in fortified silos deep inside the country. You have to be really lucky as a saboteur to get in there. So it looks like for attacking the U.S. with nuclear weapons, the enemy needs to create their own missile defense system. No modern technology can pull that off. Well, all's clear when it comes to nuclear.
I think another thing he's not mentioned is cyber attacks. Because if a country hacks one of the allied countries and makes it look like they've done something bad, and so the West goes to war with each other, that can be catastrophic and then would just lead to one of these other countries that hates the West to invade, right? So let's say Russia hacked a European country like France and made a nuke go off in America, right? And made it look like it was France. So then America invades Europe and America are at war with each other. And then Russia just sneaks in out of nowhere and takes land. And China sit there laughing their head off about the whole thing. Do you know what I mean?
Weapons, if they're used, there's only one scenario. Let's picture some kind of military miracle. Enemy forces cross the ocean without anyone noticing. Then they manage to land smoothly on the west coast of the U.S. What a stroke of luck! What's next? Well, specialists and just people with good imagination believe that the country is going to be safe thanks to its geography.
Yeah.
It's because of geography that the U.S. is never likely to be successfully captured by any foreign power. Look at the map. The continent
it's literally like a geography castle. You got the Appalachian Trail on one side, you got the Rocky Mountains on the other, you got the plains in the middle. It's so difficult to invade that country.
The USA is huge. I mean, it's just gigantic.
Yeah.
No matter which side the enemy invades the country from, they'll find the same huge variety of landscapes: forests, swamps, mountains, deserts, river systems, canyons. Different landscapes mean different conditions for fighting. To fight effectively, special training and sometimes equipment are needed for each landscape, not to mention the logistics of moving troops through these forests, swamps, mountains. Well, you get it. Depending on the area, different types of forces need to be used, and the invader will have to quickly adapt on the ground. At the same time, the American military in the same area will already be prepared for everything. And imagine what it's like to advance through open areas like deserts and plains.
Which, by the way, they're massive. I've drove the bus through some of them plains, and it's legitimately crazy how big it is. Like, crazy.
For American aviation, the enemy is like a target at a shooting range. Military analyst Dylan Lerke suggests that the combined military potential of the rest of the world would be insufficient to even get a foothold on the continental United States.
Yeah.
And the key word here is get a foothold, because it's not enough to successfully land in someone else's country. You need to advance troops inland, capture, and then also hold territories. In this territory, there are not only civilian facilities, but also military bases. According to their own public estimates, the U.S. has 598 military facilities in 40 countries, as well as 4,461 bases within the states.
Jesus, thousands of bases. That's insane, isn't it? It's never going to be invaded. I think it'll either fall from the inside, it'll fall from some sort of cyber attack, which, by the way, I've done cybersecurity classes, and the amount of cyber attacks the US gets on a daily basis is insane. Like, they're getting attacked constantly. It just so happens that the US also has really good, robust systems to prevent it from actually being successful. But they are getting attacked like every single second of every day.
This is a list of the countries where U.S. military bases and facilities are located. Along with a large number of bases in Germany, the U.S. has major military facilities in Qatar and Diego Garcia Atoll, as well as in Japan and South Korea. The U.S. Armed Forces have about 1.4 million active duty personnel and 850,000 reservists. But some of these people are scattered around the globe, stationed at U.S. bases, overall about 10%. The rest of the military are inside the country, and they'll fight. Moreover, many of these soldiers have real combat experience, and that might even be more important than all the technology and equipment. If you look at the military conflicts that have happened in the last 20 to 30 years, you can see that the U.S. has been involved in many of them one way or another. We're not considering the moral side of the issue right now.
Yeah.
Just the facts, okay? In addition, there were two wars where the U.S. was really involved as a fighting party, the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. The first one ended in 2011, the second in 2021, so pretty recently. I don't think I'll be wrong if I assume that the country and its commanders gained practical experience, and considering that the war in Afghanistan lasted from 2001 and it's the longest war in U.S. history, there was plenty of time to gain experience. Not to mention that wars involving the U.S. are also a testing ground for new technologies that can later be used for the defense of their country. And don't forget about the civilian population in the States, people who...
Yeah, they also, all the civilians have guns. All of them have guns. I think, again, it's just going to fall from the inside. I think having people... That reminds me of that comment that J.D. Vance made the other day about referring to the UK as some country that hasn't fought in a war for 20, 30 years, even though we helped the US during Afghanistan and Iraq and lost lads there. So for him to say something like that is truly frustrating, to say the least, from someone who should be knowledgeable on British military. But I think it falls from within the US. It really does.
Also have guns. Guns that these people know how to use. You can often see a quote on the internet that's attributed to Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander-in-chief of the combined fleet of the Japanese Empire during World War II. Here's the quote. "You cannot invade mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass."
There you go.
In fact, there are no records that the commander-in-chief of the Japanese fleet ever said these words. However, this quote describes the situation in the U.S. pretty accurately. A new study published in the journal Injury Prevention on July 25th, 2024 shows...
Well, there's more guns than there is people in the US, isn't there? So just put that into perspective.
...that of all gun owners, 78.8% own their firearms for protection. 58.1% of gun owners carried their weapon outside their home in the past 12 months. 72% of gun owners named protection as the major reason for owning a gun, while 91% said it was the major or minor reason. And it's not exactly a new thing from recent years. Since 1972, the percentage of American households that own at least one firearm has stayed pretty stable, ranging from 37 to 47%. In 2023, around 42% of U.S. households had at least one firearm. In fact, more than 175 countries around the world allow their citizens to own firearms, but the USA is in first place by a huge margin. Next are the Falkland Islands, Yemen, and New Caledonia.
The Falkland Islands have been invaded before and the British kicked ass. My dad was there, kicked the Argentina's ass when they wanted the Falklands Islands. Just throw that out there.
But they have 2-3 times fewer guns per capita. Well, I'm not making any bold statements, but we can assume that in the event of a potential invasion, ordinary Americans won't just sit on their hands, especially since many actually know how to shoot. New nuclear missile. In June 2024, the U.S. Air Force conducted a test launch of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile to provide confidence in the lethality and effectiveness of the nation's nuclear deterrent. To showcase their power, the military also released video footage and photos of the missile, which, let's be honest, are seriously impressive. The rocket launched on Tuesday, June 4th at 12:56 a.m. local time from Vandenberg Space Force Base, located north of Santa Barbara.
Space Force Base. I'll never get used to hearing that.
Along the coast of Central California. An intercontinental ballistic missile standing 60 feet tall had a warhead that flew about 4,200 miles and landed near a remote military base in the Marshall Islands, deep in the central part of the Pacific Ocean.
Jesus
The truth
Christ.
is, there wasn't an actual nuclear charge in the missile. They were testing a non-nuclear bomb after all. The U.S. Air Force claims that this test is not the result of current world events, noting that over 300 similar tests have been conducted in the past. They don't mean that the world is on the brink of World War III. On the contrary, they emphasize once again that it won't happen. About 400
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, it's not like they're not going to test this stuff just in case, you know?
Continental ballistic missiles, Minuteman III, are currently stationed at Air Force bases in Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Wyoming, where they've been on combat duty for more than 50 years.
Sheesh.
Microwave weapon against drones. The U.S. Navy plans to test its first powerful microwave weapon aboard.
Didn't we see this recently? There was a video online of like a massive flock of drones and they were all just dropping from the sky from a test. I think we saw it recently. I'll have to Google it.
A naval vessel as early as 2026. The experimental weapon known as the Meteor Project will emit beams of intense electromagnetic energy to disable the electronics of drones.
Yeah.
This will help avoid wasting ammo on shooting down such tech. Luckily, something like energy can't run out, unlike bullets, for example.
Right.
Each shot is relatively cheap, in theory. Microwave weapons are part of the U.S. military's interest in directed energy systems.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how much energy this actually takes. Like how effective actually is it as well, and what the distance is, and all of the above.
This is a new type of weapon that can hit targets without solid projectiles. Along with microwaves, this includes things like lasers, sound waves, and even particle beams.
Wow.
Actually, the manufacturer of directed energy weapons, Epirus, is already supplying the military with powerful microwave capabilities designed to take out drone electronics.
There you go.
And now the Navy's getting ready to test how well the company's technology handles taking out unmanned surface vessels.
Wow.
Other countries, by the way, are also ramping up their production.
I mean, it makes sense because the next big push in the world is going to be unmanned equipment. So using something that can take that out is an obvious thing, isn't it?
Of directed energy weapons. Recently, the UK showcased its Dragonfire system, basically a giant laser cannon capable of taking down airborne targets. And we're talking about really small targets at a range of 0.6 miles.
Wow.
Future technologies as they are. You owe me a like. See you later.
It was a good video. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll leave a link to the original video. Yeah, I don't think the US will ever get invaded. I think it'll just fall from within, unfortunately. But I'd love to know your opinion. What do you think in the comment section down below? Also, check out Morale. Link down below. Please be a backer. Let's support this. Let's get it going. And also check out Chug. 10% off. Link down below. Other than that, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.